The gloves were off in the first of two New York City mayoral debates.
If you think that there's no difference between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, then that's the candidate for you. If you think it's time to have a Democratic Party that actually stands up to Donald Trump and his billionaire-backed assault on working people,
well, first
thank
you,
Mr.
Mamdani. You're not a Democrat,
candidates
right? You're not a Democrat. You're a Democratic socialist.
With less than 3 weeks until Election Day, Democratic candidate Zohran Mamdani is currently leading by double digits in the polls. But as proven by Mamdani himself in the primary, anything is possible at the ballot box. The candidates had no problem getting their personal attacks in.
He has never had a job. On his resume, it says he interned for his mother. This is not a job for a first-timer. Any day, you could have a hurricane, you have, God forbid, a 9/11, a health pandemic. If you don't know what you're doing,
Cuomo.
people could die.
And if we have a health pandemic, then why would New Yorkers turn back to the governor who sent seniors to their death in nursing homes? That's the kind of experience that's on offer here today. What I don't have in experience, I make up for in integrity. And what you don't have in integrity, you could never make up for in experience.
Wow. My panel and the Arena text chain is back with us. What did you make about some of those zingers there and who won in last night's debate, David?
Well, I don't think the debate fundamentally changed the structure of the race, which is a race that Mamdani has a significant lead in right now, though I do think Cuomo seized the opportunity to try and highlight some of the things he's been doing on the campaign trail, but obviously to a broader audience, bringing up Mamdani's record on Israel, bringing up Mamdani's past comments about policing and crime. That was all important for Cuomo to get out there. But here's the thing that did surprise me the most about the debate, and you got it right there with that clip. A lot of frontrunners go into a debate and they're like, do no harm. And they kind of are cautious and sit back a little bit. Mamdani did not do that last night. He was out to also eradicate Cuomo as a viable choice. And so even with that lead, I thought it was intriguing. His strategy and approach was to actually be on the aggressive as well. Cuomo needed to do that. Mamdani chose to do that because I think he thinks his argument against Cuomo is fundamental to the message that he is trying to portray to the broader public.
So, Sir Michael, do you think Cuomo did enough to close the gap in the
polls?
polls?
I think Dave is 100% correct. I think it's going to be Mamdani. He's incredibly talented. As a Republican, I certainly don't agree with many of his positions, but there's something to be said about the arguments that he's making to New Yorkers that is palatable. I am concerned about some of his presentations on economics. I'm concerned about the idea of the role of government as it pertains to sort of level setting for people who have economically struggled. I think there's a different way to go about certain things, but that message is resonating. And if you're a Cuomo, folks in New York know who Cuomo is. And there's some real concern about his past misgivings. There's some concern about some of the things he did as governor. And he didn't, in my opinion, effectively address those things aggressively enough. Mamdani did. He showcased strength. And even if you're in New York and you're curious and maybe you say, I don't disagree with him, you watch that and say, this is a guy who will fight for me. And that moves the needle for voters.
What do you think?
I think what Democrats want to see is a fighter, and Mamdani is giving them that. You're seeing these protests around the country. You're going to see people assemble on the streets probably on Saturday. Mamdani is galvanizing a part of the base that wants to see the fight taken to this White House, and he's doing it effectively. And you saw on that debate stage, he remained cool and calm. And yes, Cuomo was able to get a few jabs in on his inexperience. But I think at the end of the day, like Shermichael was saying, New Yorkers know who Andrew Cuomo is. I mean, he has high name ID. And they're like, this isn't the guy for us, not only because we don't believe he's going to take the fight to Trump, but we want someone that's fresh and new. And I think Mamdani is giving the party that. I don't agree with all of his policy positions. I think they're going to be really hard to implement. But he's given us, I think, the party something to rally around.
At the moment, everyone said it. Start getting ready to say Mayor Mamdani.
Yeah.
And it is going to roil both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. The Trump administration has made clear that they are willing to use the purse strings, to use every single tool at their disposal in order to try to, quote unquote, punish New York, essentially, for electing this man that Donald Trump, who I think sees a useful foil, but Donald Trump also has a lot of friends still in New York that do not like Mr. Mamdani. And, I think there is going to be, you're going to see a rally with AOC and Bernie this Sunday night with Mamdani to try to, introduce the more canvassing, really try to rack up the score. But what's going to be interesting is in New Jersey and in Virginia, you have Democrats that are not Mamdani. They are much more moderate. And so there is going to be this debate over what does Mamdani mean for the future of the Democratic Party, but then also look at Virginia and New Jersey to also be a part of that debate.
Yeah, and actually, I wanted to go to you on this. How much does Mamdani represent the Democratic Party right now, in your view, David?
Well, he certainly represents, he's capturing the imagination and energizing the base of the party in New York, which is a 6-1 Democratic city. New York City does not look like battleground districts that will determine control of Congress in 26, does not look like battleground states that will determine control of who wins the presidency in 2028. But that doesn't mean that Mamdani isn't going to try to stake a claim on having authorship over a Democratic Party's future. He said this week at an event in Manhattan Monday night, he said that he's won the battle for the soul of the Democratic Party. He was not just talking about in New York City. So I do think it is going to be interesting because there are these different models, these more moderate national security female candidates running for governor in Virginia and New Jersey. I think there's going to be a debate as the results come in on election night in just a few weeks, Pamela, about which path forward the Democratic Party is going to pursue, because you're going to have different options available.
Yeah, and some Democrats are saying, oh, he only won because of his focus on affordability, and he won in spite of some of his left-wing views. Then there's some people that also believe that his left-wing views are at least like operating as an outsider outside of the party. That's what actually galvanized people that are dissatisfied with the Democratic Party, and that debate's going to continue after election.
Yeah, and I hope Mamdani actually does become the future of the Democratic Party. And if I were advising President Trump, I actually would not go after him. I would draw the contrast and the distinction between this is what the Democratic Party represents versus what the Republican Party represents. Capitalism, pro-growth. A lot of people in this country don't necessarily want the inability to gain wealth, to become rich. They just want it to be more accessible. And I think Republicans can argue we want to give more access to the capitals of success to the American people versus having a government-controlled, government-ran version of that. I think the average American would say we reject that overwhelmingly. So don't go after him, Mr. President. Let's utilize this as an example. I think that's good for Republicans.
And you mentioned the Virginia race as well. The candidates for Virginia's Attorney General debated last night. And the Democrat in that race, Jay Jones, is under pressure after these violent text messages that he sent in 2022 that resurfaced. Obviously, this was a big focus at the debate. I just want to play what he said about the messages.
Let me be very clear. I am ashamed. I am embarrassed. And I'm sorry. I am sorry to Speaker Gilbert. I'm sorry to his family. I'm sorry to my family. And I'm sorry to every single Virginian. I cannot take back what I said. But you have my word that I will always be accountable for my mistakes.
Was that statement enough, Sabrina?
I mean, it was a pretty forceful apology. I think he's taking ownership at the end of the day. It's up to the voters if that's enough. Of course, those messages are just, they're absolutely horrific. You're also seeing text messages coming out on the Republican side, that group text thread of pretty disgusting messages as well. It's a problem, and I think he took responsibility and apologized. Ultimately, it's going to be up to the voters to decide. And of course, there's, the governor's race there. Will hit these messages? Will that impact the governor's race? I don't think so. But I think part of this is you have to take ownership for your words. He did that. Now let's talk about the policy issues. And at the end of the day, there are two candidates that stand on very different sides of the policy. And, I think voters will have to make that choice.
I would just say quickly, the difference is Republicans have called for those individuals to lose their positions. The Republican Party of
Except for J.D. Vance.
Yeah, that's a fair point. But the Republican Party of New York,
that's the vice president.
They're completely restructuring the entire chapter there. Republicans have condemned this. I haven't seen a single Democrat say, you know what, Mr. J. Jones, you should withdraw from this race. They have not done that because they care more about winning. I get the politics of it, but Republicans, if this were reversed, oh my God, the outrage will be beyond 10.
So do you think that J.D. Vance, the vice president, should condemn those?
Oh, of course I think the vice president should have condemned it. I would have condemned it. I get the vice president's point of saying, look, Democrats aren't condemning Jay Jones, so why should we fall into this trap? I get that, but I think we got to be at a higher core.